Isn't it kind of funny that like one of these companies is like a punk rock for you in your face, like we're good DIY, we're doing this, and the other one was a billionaire going, I want wrestling. Couldn't be more diametrically opposed. If you try a bunch of northeastern like grungy dudes who are like, we're gonna make wrestling.
And now we have like wrestling by committee, and
And
I want wrestling.
And then we have literal wrestling, we have corpo wrestling, and then we have like what would happen if we gave a fan $1 billion kind of wrestling. And
Like,
I think that takes us into our argument, folks. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pro Wrestling Debate Show. Do we have heat? My name's Michael.
my name's Steven.
And we're here to debate which one of these, I guess we'll call them WWE subsidiaries, is better.
Conquests.
What? The conquests, the trophies,
The purchases.
these would be on the wall of Vince
The
McMahon.
victims of the Monday Night War.
That's true. These would be on the Vince McMahon's wall next to that big Jurassic Park head. Dinosaur? That's
Dinosaur. Yeah, I think it's either a T-Rex or a Triceratops.
I think it was a T-Rex. Yeah,
T-Rex.
T-Rex. I see it.
Same one as Jurassic Park.
I see it. Do you remember? You've seen Beyond the Mat, haven't you?
Yeah, a little bit of it. We'll
Yeah.
have to remember it.
It's where Vince is like sitting there. And he's like, "We don't make just television.
It's in the office, I think.
We make movies
for the Money in the Bank they did.
It's 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Which is still, I think, one of the best things WWE has ever done was that Money in the Bank.
And this might not. That is true. Giving history as hindsight is, in hindsight's 2020. Holy. I don't know if this is gonna make the edit, but like,
oh boy,
dude, what a bad scene to put that in, given what we now know about that office and that man, and the fact that those two guys immediately left and he pumped out so much hand sanitizer. Like, oh, they're gross. They were close. You're a monster, dude. What are you talking about?
it was bad.
Oh, yeah, dude, not good. Also, that meant before we get into our debate, real quick, that Vince McMahon documentary is coming out this month.
It is. It's really funny how like it was supposed to kind of be a story about like how Vince McMahon like brought the WWE out of stuff, and then the scandals and allegations happened, and they're like, well, we need a few more months on this. because some more information has come to light, and we have to add and rewrite some things.
Tonally, the entire project has to shift hard.
It was so bad we got the poster wrong.
Oh my! Oh yeah, the 4 ropes on the poster.
4 ropes on the poster.
And the Japanese turnbuckle, the old Japanese.
What
a error!
What an error!
Netflix. That seems
That's
like
that was someone at Netflix hit an AI button and was like,
true.
Vince McMahon on a
marionette
with a ring, and it just was like
cell shaded, and then it was that's what you got.
This is what they got.
Well, before there was AI, there used to be more wrestling companies. And 2 of those wrestling companies are the ones that we are talking about today. I have taken the antithesis of what I believe is good pro wrestling, and that's the DIY, do it yourself. Don't let anyone tell you what's right and wrong. ECW, led by the charismatic, almost cult-like figure, Paul Heyman and his miscreant pirate crew. Steven, tell me about your choice in WCW.
Well, WCW was a wrestling promotion that lasted from the 80s up until 2001. Not related to anything else that happened that year. Unrelated incidents.
Unrelated. Close. Dude,
the third worst thing to happen that year.
Okay, obviously number 1, we understand.
Yeah, it was Limp Bizkit
discontinuation
at the World Trade Center.
Oh, playing?
Yeah, they shot one of their music videos there. That's the worst thing to ever happen at that building.
That's not making the edit, but anyways. Whoa. That one's on the floor, boys. I'm gonna take a sip of this Coke, not product placement.
Listen, when I found out that they shot that video like less than 3 months after, like before it happened, I was like, it was the video for Rollin'.
And The Undertaker is
Yes.
Holy!
Yeah, no, that music video was shot like 3 months before
Don't move
the
that around. Just hold it for your
just,
talk to the tip talk to the tip of that microphone.
that was, 3 months before,
Dude, the happenings. The day the world changed.
before a Toby Keith song came out.
That's true, Toby Keith. Shout out.
That song was everywhere for a while.
Shou
Before we couldn't listen to System of a Down for a few months on the radio.
Oh, yeah.
You weren't allowed to listen to Toxicity. That whole album did not get any airplay.
Shout out Toby Keith. Shout out Brian Keith, the professional wrestler. Somehow, I think Brian Keith's more of a real cowboy
I'm
than Toby Keith
I don't know
is.
how we managed to connect that all back around, but hey, we did it.
Because wrestling is
Every
everywhere, dude. It is. It totally is. Um, yes, but ECW, WCW, you were explaining to me WCW though. Why do you think WCW, and you can do this with your opening argument here. I'd love to see what WCW has to offer. Why do you think it's better than ECW?
well, if I had to tell you
You do
exactly why,
that's it.
I think it's better.
That's the premise of the show. You have explained it to a T.
Perfectly. Awesome. Great. So, WCW,
Yeah.
one, it was national. First off, so there was more eyes on it. So there was just more
The
exposure
super
for all the wrestlers.
the superstation.
Right? Like, so, and then when we kind of look at both companies in hindsight here, when you look at WCW, look at how many of the stars from WCW are now also considered massive WWE names since the whole
Switch over. Yeah, change over. Bye.
nonprofit lawsuit happened.
That's right.
But but you have Goldberg, you have
Yeah, you're struggling to come up with them because I will
Goldberg,
right.
you
And
have
Goldberg.
No, but you have Goldberg, you have Eddie, you have Ray. Both of those, yes, did originally start in ECW
Yeah,
in the US,
you're welcome.
but they were not going to have the national exposure and presence on ECW that they did on WCW.
You know what? I know you're saying that, but you forget that ECW was on TNN. That it was before the pre-Spike, before Spike TV. It used to be TNN, or no, I'm sorry, TNT rather. ECW used to be on TNT, and or was it TNN? It was one of those one of those two networks. But ECW had TV distribution. They had like, wasn't on TBS, the Superstation. Let's see, ECW on TNN. Yeah, so it was on TNN, which was the Nashville network, which was Spike TV before Spike TV.
But if you look at it, yes, so they did have that, which was at the time a regional, I believe, network.
Yeah, it's probably right.
It wasn't like a
Sure.
cable TV you can
Deep
flip
cable.
on. It was one of those ones where you paid a little bit extra and you
Right.
got the channels.
But just because you had far and wide cable distribution, I don't
But
think
that's not the reason either. I think it's when you look at the amount of stars, yes, some of them did wrestle for ECW, but it
Yeah.
was for much less time than it was for WCW and WWE by extension. And you look at the amount of stars that crossed over and were able to successfully cross over from the companies, in
Yeah.
addition to that, how much of the influence the crossovers have on wrestling today from WCW versus ECW, there's almost no question. There are two people from ECW.
No, I
And
will.
we can
But look at the large numbers, right? Okay, WCW has. I will give you that. WCW has guys that have gone on and had huge careers and were very popular in WCW as well. The issue is you also had a ton of absolute bottom feeders in WCW. Like you're talking I understand you're trying to say judge me on my wins, but like dude, we got to judge you on your losses too. There were so many just bad I mean, Disco Inferno. WCW gave us Disco Inferno, and in the year 2024, in the year of our Lord, we are still dealing with Disco Inferno. And that is a huge blight on your argument. You guys had, yes, you gave us Goldberg. He also compromised Bret Hart to a permanent end. You know, you had Kevin Nash, but Kevin Nash was already a big guy from WWE. You had a lot of guys, a lot of them, but a lot of misses too. And I want to say, I understand ECW is not is not immune from that. They have misses too.
Well, no, no, it's not that they have misses. It's that all except for like 3 of them were never shots.
I mean, Taz, right? Taz, you want to sleep
Was
on?
commentary by the time he was in WWE.
Yeah, he got hurt, but Taz, oh,
Regardless, still he was good commentary. Great,
amazing.
awesome, great commentator. Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, you got Tony Schiavone. Yeah, but Tony Schiavone
Okay.
had a long time off. But back to your stars, right? You had stars. I'll give you that for sure. But what did they really like? That
The influence that they had on the company that's still like even today. Well,
you want to talk about influence on the company? ECW gave WWE the most profitable, most talked about moments in professional wrestling because all they did was bite ECW storylines. Like ECW's success also has to extend to the fact that they gave WWE the Attitude Era. They just, I mean, what that's the same. It was so good. ECW was so good as a concept. WWE took that concept, made it for larger television, and buried your company and my company in the
well,
process.
no, that's they took a good idea and made it better. And then there wasn't a
Sure.
place for any of the people where the good idea came from in the company, except for one guy, really. Like if you want to,
Yeah,
if we
it's
want to be
true.
realistic, and that guy was, well, let's say two guys. If let's be realistic, because Taz did have a very long career in WWE
He
as a commentator and as, you know, an interviewer and all of that. So we there's Paul Heyman and Taz who had very long careers
huge.
in WWE.
Sidebar on Taz real quick. Uh, they wanted big things for Taz, dude.
They
They
did.
let him
They
beat
did. They
Kurt
wanted.
Angle night
They
one.
wanted him. Unfortunately, he did get injured, and
Yeah.
that is sad. But
Dude, they would have him and Kurt
for
probably
wrestlers,
would have had
there
an
was.
amazing program together.
And
Like
don't get me wrong, ECW has good
long one.
had good wrestlers. You got
Yeah.
Terry Funk. But
Sure.
Terry Funk's in his 50s at that point.
His Twilight, right.
He is in a I'm gonna do some crazy stuff for a 50-year-old man period.
How old was Terry Funk when he joined ECW? How old was Terry Funk when he joined
I think it was like
ECW?
51 or 50. He was like late 40s. I have to think.
Let's see.
Like 48 or 49.
Yeah, I'll find it here. But keep talking to me.
So you did have good wrestlers. You had Tommy Dreamer. You had Sandman. You had RVD. RVD probably still is the best wrestler to come out of ECW.
Easily.
Like that still was active in WWE, but even then he wasn't incredibly active in he did not his career didn't translate well into WWE for one reason or another.
Yeah, for a few, but
There were a few reasons, and they were mostly due to a wellness policy violations.
yeah.
Yeah, so you know
He was there through 97, so he was 53 in 1997.
so he was 53 years
We
old.
call that his Twilight, but isn't Edge how old's Edge?
Edge and Christian are both in their 50s.
Are they? Yeah, I think they both
Early
are.
50, like late 40s, early 50s.
Terry Funk looks absolutely ancient at 50
Dude,
compared.
it's what cigarettes will do to you, man.
It's true.
Like that's what cigarettes and not alcoholism, but just drinking alcohol your whole life will do to you. That's not like a whole lot. That's not a problem amount. That's just oh,
Yeah.
you definitely had a couple afterward
Yeah.
for the last 30 years.
Terry lived a hard life.
Terry
R.I.P.
lived the life of a man
R.I.P. Terry Funk, dude. The legend.
before skincare routines.
Dude, I want to go on a diatribe here about Terry Funk real quick. The one thing there's all these old documentaries about ECW, and when Terry Funk joined ECW, he was trying to think like, what could I do that would pop the boys and the fans alike, something they've never seen from me. And at like 50 years of age, Terry Funk was like, I'm gonna incorporate a moonsault into my arsenal. So like he started doing moonsaults, which is insane to me. That's like passion. That's the crux of what I love about ECW. It's these guys were working for a absolute shyster in Paul Heyman at the time.
Well, and so that's
it's
another thing that I want to mention right now,
Go for it.
because I'll connect something currently happening in wrestling with WCW and ECW.
Ooh, I'm ready.
WWE is using TNA in the exact same way WCW used ECW in the 90s to bring over stars and court them before just fully signing them to actual real money contracts.
Yeah.
ECW was just WCW's TNA. That's what ECW is. It's
They,
TNA.
they
It's
also
just the TNA.
they were also the same for the WWE. When
Although they were.
WWE took a bunch
It
of
was
guys
back and
too.
forth.
Yeah,
Because you know why? Because
it's true.
TNA, when they were Impact, was the same thing for AEW that ECW is for WCW. It was a place to court people and then bring them over. Don Callis,
It's true.
a few other people,
Yeah.
but also just to have Kenny show up and stuff like that. Regardless, same thing. That's what ECW existed as a jumping off platform for real stars.
Yeah. I
And the people left over when it kind of fell apart, there was one person that was an active wrestler with there was two. Taz got injured, but there were really one person that had true crossover appeal. And just due to the time period and when he came in because of lawsuits and other things that had happened previously,
Mhm.
his whole gimmick was not the most TV safe.
Sure. I got you. But that's you mentioned that you got to see the guys before they became the other guys on TV. When we talk about art, whether it's music, whether it's paintings, I always like their earlier stuff. And I think that that's what ECW shows. These guys were not tethered down by what wrestling had been previously. Eastern Championship Wrestling, as ECW was previously known for, Extreme Championship Wrestling, was like standard wrestling for the time. And ECW took that and was like, man, what if we just did wrestling the way that we wanted to do it? Something that was for the modern era. ECW brought pro wrestling into the modern age because while you got WCW, you have, your Hulk Hogan's and your Stings and your Ric Flairs and all that good stuff. ECW had guys who, for lack of whether you loved it or hated it, had guys you would see in your local town. The guy you didn't want to mess with at the bar, not some muscle bound beefcake who spends hours in the gym. No, I'm talking about a guy like the Sandman who looks like he spent 4 hours at the end of that bar, and he looks like he's gonna take that pull cue, break it over his knee, and stab somebody with it. ECW felt dangerous, and that's what I think is so cool. It's very
Yeah, they had
punk rock.
guys like Jimmy Superfly Snuka at the beginning.
Yeah, but he's
Actually dangerous people, yeah. Or New Jack for the later period. Actually dangerous people.
and that's and yes, I totally understand that. And I've never worked with New Jack, but I've heard enough stories about people who have worked with New Jack. And yeah, he was crazy. He's not a good guy. Not a good guy at all.
He's like that one red robot from Futurama.
Oh, yeah, dude.
The one that's like, ha ha.
Yeah, yeah.
That one, yeah,
The
that
cla-
was New Jack.
He
Yeah,
wanted
the
to give
clamp
everybody
guy.
the clamps, dude.
Yeah, the clamp. Yeah, that guy.
Dude.
When
New-
he got the knives. That one episode. That was New Jack.
Wait, are you talking about New Jack when he got the knives?
Yes, New Jack in that robot same character.
That's true. That's a very good point.
But yeah, no, like let's be yes, ECW has had influence, and I think
Yeah.
it has influence more so in AEW than it does WWE.
Well, I
now,
mean,
for sure.
For now, right? When you look at the two now, right? I agree with you. I would say WWE at this point is its own.
ECW
thing.
had more influence on WWE when it was its own entity than it did after the fact. Whereas WCW has had more influence on WWE after the fact than it did during.
Yeah, no, I would say
Because
that.
no one was at war with ECW.
True.
People were just taking their stars and storylines and everything and just throwing them on a national level and making them a little more palatable for
Yeah.
mom and pop.
Can you imagine they get New Jack? They're like, "How about you don't stab anybody?" And New Jack's like,
No, that was like
That's what
Scott
they do.
Steiner cursing on WWE. Like the
Oh,
first thing
yeah.
you do is just drop an F bomb. Okay, yeah,
beans."
like that's
Dude, I will say this.
give me
I-
the freaking mic.
When I'm looking at these two, and I'm looking at like work rate, like of the matches that happen in these two companies, I have to give the nod to WCW. I think that the wrestling in WCW
It was insane.
it was so good.
You had been not that one.
Not that one. Let's skip.
Skip. You have
You have Eddie.
Listen,
We
you have
watched
Eddie
Eddie and Ray.
Guerrero. You have Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
You know, we're
Dean
not even talking
Malenko.
about the big stars at this. You know, you could talk about
Your
the
Flair.
Scott Halls,
Yeah.
the Flairs,
The
the
Nash.
Hogan stuff. That's great. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
That was the money making stuff. But when you look at their mid card, when you look at WCW's cruiserweight division,
Yep. Insane.
they are WCW for me is the reason why guys like AJ Styles and even John Cena to an extent can be world champion because John Cena's 6'1". John Cena is 6'1". Look it up.
Oh,
Look it up.
I believe it.
You can. It's well, you know, I
I
have said
understand.
multiple times it's fun to lie,
It's true.
but fact check me
How
right
tall
here.
is John Cena?
He's like 6'1" or 6'2". He's not a big guy.
He's
He's the
6'1".
same height as me.
Yep.
So I'm as tall as John Cena. He would not be world champion in the 90s.
That's a good point.
He was a little guy.
That's shorter.
He was a cruiserweight. But John Cena now, because of, I think, solely because of WCW,
Yeah.
showed us guys like Eddie, guys like Ray, guys like he should not be named.
Yeah.
Were worthy talent-wise of having a title. They could be seen as serious contenders.
And at the same time, you had guys like Diamond Dallas Page.
Yeah.
You know, you had your big world champions. You got champions guys. You had Booker T. Harlem Heat was cool as hell back in the day. I mean, I know he did take that turn and go be GI Bro for a little bit.
No.
But WCW.
Oh, I forgot one for ECW.
What's up?
The Dudleys.
Yeah, Dudleys are great. We're gonna get to the Dudleys, don't you?
Listen, I think they both are pretty equal in the tag
Right.
teams that came
Right.
from both. ECW had
They did.
some of
the best tag teams.
yeah.
I mean, amazing tag. Rob Van Dam and Sabu when they tagged together, sick.
real good.
So sick. The Dudleys, amazing. WCW, I will say, singles matches, upper mid card, WCW, all time, one of the top mid
WCW
cards.
has the best
ever.
mid card of all time.
Now there was a lot of trash in there too,
Oh,
but then there was
there was a lot of trash in every company.
sure, I know. I had Ian and Axel Rotten in my company.
Like, listen, there's every company has matches that should just be on the house shows, on the card.
True.
It's just that's how it is. It is what it is. That's just the way the business works.
But I want to speak to how being an alternative in the face of sameness, right? How big that is for ECW and why I get drawn to it because there's so much homogenization in between WCW and WWE at the time. Like they're both cartoony, larger than life characters, while WCW is a little more like Southern wrestling, you know. But having something else, having something that's why I like AEW because I'll be honest, wrestling previously was not necessarily like the most safest art form. It was kind of carny. It was kind of there was a lot of like cheap tricks and stuff like that, and a lot of like I wouldn't say high quality. There was not. It was a scuzz to wrestling, and I like that. I don't want everything to be so like. You know, I want the carniness. I don't want everything to be like corporate. Like I want something to be different, right? I think that's what ECW did represent at the time. WCW was just more of the same. Now they did step outside the box with some things like the good mid cards, the luchadors, and brought all of that. But a lot of that was taken from ECW. I think that a lot of the cool stuff about WCW came from ECW. Once again, you are not the original. You are biting the style of my company here.
I mean, yes, but no.
Okay.
They went and did it on a larger scale. Like it like that's the thing is yes, they did come from there.
Yeah.
But they didn't have their all-time matches there. Like none of them did. Not a single one of them did.
I mean, Raven did.
Oh, yay, Raven. Yeah.
Oh,
only like the listen, that's like
you're gonna kayfabe.
You're naming
Raven?
like
Come on.
you're naming like the 30th most memorable wrestler like that.
Excuse me, he was on the cover of WCW versus NWO World Tour. He was on the cover. He was on the little gray N64 cartridge.
Okay, that's
because
cool. He was on our video game
yeah,
company.
you know who else was on it? The Big Show, Hulkster, and I think Sting and Raven. Yeah, he's worth it.
Mm,
You took our top guys, you took our middle of the road guys, and you took our
well,
hardcore
yeah,
matches.
because ECW didn't pay anyone. Why did they leave the company? Oh, that's right. Paul Heyman didn't pay anybody. He just
Yeah,
didn't pay anyone. He just had them work and didn't pay them. So your company just didn't pay people. So they left, and it wasn't that people were stealing things from ECW,
it's
it's
true.
that they were taking things because they weren't paid for it. It's not stealing when you're not paid for the stuff. At that point, you're just taking creative control of your own direction.
Wage theft.
Yeah, he just wage thefted everyone. They just took what was theirs in gimmicks.
Yeah, that is fair.
Everyone took the gimmicks from him. You know why? Because they didn't get any money from him.
And I'm sure Paul Heyman learned a valuable lesson and did not do that.
And he didn't pay. Yeah, he learned a valuable lesson. Don't pay anyone. Sell out your entire company to WWE and lie about it to your guys until literally the night of, till one of the
No!
guys wants to show up at a place
Oh no!
and just make sure you don't see your family again.
If
Like
if you're not smartened up to this, there might be people who may not know the story, right? For those unaware, it's WrestleMania 18,
something like
16, 18, 17, some of the
that. One of the teens.
where Paul Heyman popped up. He was going to be what was it?
He was on commentary.
That's right. And Tommy Dreamer was mad that Heyman basically sold the company without telling anybody. And Heyman
And also left the company owing everyone a lot of money. So I don't think anyone ever got paid. No one ever got paid.
so Tommy Dreamer was going to drive.
Everyone just stopped being mad about
He
it.
was going to drive to the arena. He was driving to the arena with a loaded, yep, and he was going to compromise Paul Heyman to a permanent end and then himself live on WrestleMania.
He was gonna send Paul Heyman back to the lobby.
There ain't no gulag in this one, boys. Yeah, that was going to happen. And we're all very glad it did not. We're so glad it did not. That would have completely
So
changed.
like let's we have to make sure that it wasn't necessarily stealing. These people weren't even really stolen as much as it was, hey, these companies will actually pay you money.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. And that's kind of that is an issue, right? I understand that the wage theft is an issue. Pay people for their labor.
Maybe they wouldn't have left.
Maybe they wouldn't have left. Maybe the company would still be around. Having said that, this is something that happens in a lot of these DIY areas. You get bad actors, and you know what? That shouldn't disqualify too much.
Can we talk about how the bad actor in this situation, how his career has fared?
Of
Uh,
anyone else in that company,
he's the most successful person.
he is very successful. That is, and will always be a very
One
interesting
of the
fact.
most important people to the company.
V-
To the point that the company
Yeah,
probably forced everyone that was mad at him
to get over it.
to get over it.
Yeah,
Because
Paul Heyman holds
Paul
the
Heyman's
keys.
making money.
Paul Heyman, dude, you want to talk about like crazy? You talk about like wrestling biopics. I want the Paul Heyman story so bad. I want Paul Heyman because I think he's such a complicated character because at one point he was doing it for like sticking it to the man, this is the art, and then like he was eventually like, oh, money. And
Yeah, then
completely
at a
sold out
certain
all of
point,
his ideas.
It wasn't even just a ooh money, it was a ooh, I'm unofficially working for Vince McMahon
Yeah.
while officially running ECW, and no one knows but me and Vince McMahon.
Yeah, one thing to say if you were related to Paul, I guess he always takes care of his family first. That's a good quality to have. It doesn't necessarily seem like he treated some people the best in their time, but given the fact that ECW was filled with absolute psychopaths and a lot of maniacs, and I don't think that should be disqualifying because I think those psychopaths and maniacs put on a good fair bit of work. He was the king of them. And if you ever go back, and this is one of the things I really like, you talk about like these inspirational halftime speeches that coaches give or like before the big game. Like Paul Heyman, oh, he can do it. And I'm a sucker for those. There's this point in it was the second time we're bringing it up. Shout out Beyond the Mat. He's giving the speech to the locker room before their first ECW pay-per-view. And like I'm watching it at home and I'm just like, okay, Paul, I'm ready to go wrestle the Sandman now. Like on my couch, ready to go give it all for Paul Heyman. So I think that when you have something like that, the art that comes out of situations, though they're probably bad on the back end, as we've seen with the business, produces wonderful art. Sometimes the most toxic situations produce beautiful art. And that's what I think ECW was able to do. At the highest of the highs, it was amazing. At the lowest of lows, yeah, it was bad. And while WCW was more, I would say, there was a less of a room for WCW to hit those super high marks, but they were never going to hit the super low marks of ECW either.
I feel like that last year they were.
I understand. I mean, we're talking.
I mean, I'm arguing against myself there, but WCW, like that 2000 to 2001 was a
You're right.
dark period for the company.
You're right, and I should never interrupt my opponent while they're making mistakes. But let's talk about that terrible
But
last year of
no, well,
WCW.
Paul Heyman is like that dad that gives you a really, really great, amazing speech when you're a kid
Yeah,
and talks to you about life, and it's a really great life speech.
yeah,
And then he leaves for milk right after the speech, and you don't see him ever again.
yeah, dude. And
He
then
just leaves your family. He gives you the most important life advice imaginable, and then leaves you.
and you thought he was going to get a pack of smokes, but all he did was go film Rollerball with LL Cool J, but he never came home.
And then he shows up on TV one day with a lot more money and a new family.
Dude, I understand why Tommy was like, I'm going to WrestleMania, brother.
While owing people tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, and he sold the company you work for. You find this out. That's like going to work at Applebee's and learning that your Applebee's is closing.
I will say I do appreciate WCW for taking in a lot of.
He closed it like a fast food
He
restaurant.
did. And you swooped in like the new Amazon warehouse that you all are, and you picked up all my scraggly talents and you renamed them and you dusted them off, and you got Mikey Whipwreck was there, and Sandman showed up for a little bit. You know, it was cool. I appreciate you picking the boys up because they needed to make those house payments because I did not make those house payments as the ECW representative here. One of the things, but there's so many good things though, right? So many things that I think is wrestling in and of itself, right? ECW, the DIY, like I don't know if you know this, but the designs for like a lot of the ECW shirts were drawn by Taz. And Bubba Ray and Devon handled like booking out buildings and stuff like that. It's more of the wrestling that I know that I've grown up with, the small independents. And I like that ECW took the small regional independent, was able to take it to be something massive. And WCW did that too. But WCW also just had Ted Turner just say, I want my TV wrestling on on Monday nights at 7 o'clock. And that's what they got. You guys were a grassroots movement that got a billionaire to hand you a bunch of money, and you kind of stopped I would say you stopped making television that was for wrestling and made television that was for the larger audience. You tried to make it too big. Like you try to bring in too big of a tent. That's kind of my issue with WWE right now. It's like the pro wrestling aspect of it is a little bit going by the wayside as opposed to we're just trying to tell like super long form stories that are kind of sloppily written and it's all sanitized. It doesn't feel real. Like that's the thing. ECW felt real. WCW feels very cleaned up. And that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think it boils down to taste. In ECW, tastes like warm beer and maybe a stale pack of cigarettes. But sometimes that's what you need. You don't always. Yes, it
No,
is.
that's the most disgusting thing
Oh,
ever.
sometimes you gotta be a dirtbag.
That's not a dirtbag thing. That's just you don't care about yourself.
Yeah,
That's
it's wrestling for the depressed.
it's
It was definitely of the era, right? That 90s time was kind of dirty,
Well, I
grungy.
mean, it's just hardcore. It was just hardcore wrestling.
It
That's
was.
what it was. It was just hardcore wrestling. Like at the end of the day, it was what hardcore wrestling was personified.
Sure.
Which I mean is still more or less lived through the honor by companies like
GCW.
GCW. I'm not going to say CZW. That's more not
Yeah.
hardcore.
No, we
There's a lot more broken glass involved.
sure.
Unless, shopping carts filled with
Accoutrement.
various baseball bats and trash can lids and ladders and barbed wire and stuff.
No.
Your more typical wrestling fare.
Yeah.
You're not there to see someone get, demolished,
No.
but someone's going through a table.
Easily. Yeah.
It's gonna be a fun time.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a hardcore wrestling. So you see that live on through, well, I mean, pretty much everywhere. Everywhere
Yeah.
has hardcore wrestling. Now that's
But they brought it
again,
to the forefront.
they brought it to the forefront.
Right.
But when you look at WCW, it brought Lucha Libre to the forefront of
So much larger audience.
to a
Right.
massive audience.
And while and that
And
Blake,
that it WCW irrevocably changed the path wrestling on, like completely.
right.
Like ECW had an influence,
Yeah.
WCW made an impact.
Ooh. But they were so impactful that they gave David Arquette the championship.
Yeah.
Look,
I don't listen.
I don't know why you haven't mentioned as an argument the greatest professional wrestling movie that's ever existed was filmed as a WCW product. Ready to Rumble. Ready to Rumble is the greatest wrestling movie that's ever been made. It includes the WCW roster. But you're a Philistine and don't understand that that is a piece of cinema. Continue. He's closed his eyes and he's breathing hard because he doesn't know what to say to that.
It's not a good movie.
It's fine.
It's not a good movie.
Hey, David Arquette was good enough to play the leading role, and he was good enough to
Here's-
be your world champ.
Here's the thing: is David Arquette.
What about David Arquette? Why are we whispering about David Arquette?
What else? Like that was a mistake. No one should have done it.
Sure. Just like Paul Heyman running out on the money. I think we're even. You gave David Arquette. You gave David Arquette the same belt that Ric Flair held.
That was an oopsie daisy.
It was an oopsie. So was Paul Heyman embezzling. It was a
That was
What?
illegal on multiple levels.
and what?
Felonies were committed.
And I think that felonies.
It was just.
And if we had our head on straight about the laws in this country,
It was
David Arquette's would have been a
just a bad
capital
taste. It was
offense.
bad taste.
Yeah, it was. It's a real bad taste.
Like we could argue, the finger poke of doom being bad. I mean, on paper that looks amazing.
I'll never crap on the finger poke of doom. We've
it's
talked about this previously in another episode. Go back and watch our
It's
DX versus Natch
It's a perfect.
NWO DX debate.
It's a perfect. On paper, it looks amazing, but in practice, everybody hated it.
I just think they were mad that they got worked. I think that's all it is. I think just fans were mad that they got worked by it. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a perfect way to tell that story. I digress. I want to, speaking of finger poking of doom, you all finger poked EC or WCW enough until its demise, dude. Hulk Hogan, you had Hulk Hogan, first of all, that's a bad thing. You shouldn't have Hulk Hogan do anything. He's a bad guy. He's a bad guy. And then you give him complete creative control enough to destroy your company, man. And Vince Russo,
And he wasn't even the one to do it.
I know. And Vince Russo we still have, you all have given us people we have to deal with until the end of time as talking heads. Vince Russo, Disco Inferno, and to some extent Conan, right? All really bad. Terrible. Awful for the community. What ECW give you? Yeah, Bully Ray has a radio, or Bubba Ray has a radio show. Nah, it's okay. That's it. RVD is trying to hawk you CBD products and crypto, which, okay, whatever. I get it. RVD, make your money. I know why you don't have money, because ECW never paid you. And that's about it, right? I don't see a lot of ECW guys. running around doing a lot of things.
Yeah,
Not
because
exactly
most
the
of them
people you
have to work 9 to 5s and they're still working 40-hour jobs now. That's why.
Yeah,
You know why? Because most of them are working regular people jobs and not able to live off their paychecks as wrestlers,
that's
even the
true.
big names of them.
Yeah, fair. A lot of them are still
How
doing the
many of the
cons.
ECW legend stars are there GoFundMe fors now whenever they get sick?
A lot.
Please, a lot of them. Most of them.
Most of them.
Yeah. Yeah, you know why? Because they're all broke.
Because
Even the guys that were in WCW still to some extent.
hopefully they have some money.
Like, unless they were, like, on the tail end of stuff and we're not getting the good contracts.
Yeah. But I wanna get to we're running against our time here, and I wanna get to my final argument of why ECW is superior to World Championship Wrestling. ECW was so good, it got brought back. It got a redo in the mid 2000s. And I know you're going to absolutely destroy me about the weekly television show that was bad. But ECW gave us one of the most bringing ECW back gave us one of the top 5 wrestling top 5 WWE pay-per-views of all time. It's One Night Stand, 2005. It is by far and I'm sorry that you have to go back and watch it on the network without the original music because everyone in their life should see that Enter Sandman. You should see Sandman's entrance at the Hammerstein Ballroom to Enter Sandman. Crazy. Dude is like dude is like neck and neck with Jesus at that moment of like who's more over in that room. And it is insane. The RVD match versus John Cena, one of the most hostile crowds, one of the greatest performances from John Cena you'll ever see. The closest thing John Cena's ever gotten to being like the bad guy in an arena. No matter how much people wanted to boo John Cena, he was legitimately like there were signs that say Cena wins, will riot. And I'm sorry, when you bring that kind of passion, when you create that kind of atmosphere, it's something special. And I know it did spawn the much maligned WCW or ECWWE or WWECW. There it is. It's awful. It was bad. It was on the Sci Fi Network. They had zombies wrestle. I get it. But for that one shining moment, ECW showed why they were different, why what they did was so important to the pro wrestling space, and that was give people who were, our age and a little bit younger at that time something they could watch with pro wrestling. And I feel that same way about AEW right now because they're giving people I need a little bit more from my pro wrestling. I need more adult themes because I don't know if you know this, I am an adult. So, ECW's legacy of being the alternative, being that counterculture, is something we always need in media. We need different voices, not just people who are just worried about the status quo and pushing that dollar for the next stock options and shares and whatnot. I need somebody who's going to come in here and say, "Remember why we started doing this in the first place. Remember why you fell in love with pro wrestling, and that's because the way it made you feel." And ECW makes me feel alive. It makes me feel like I'm watching good pro wrestling because that's what it was. At its core, it was just good pro wrestling done right. Done a little hardcore from time to time. Don't get me wrong. Not everyone's cup of tea. But when you watched it, you felt something. They elicited a response, and that's what you want in your pro wrestling.
You know what else elicits a response? Sting, Ric Flair.
Yeah, they do.
Not only let's
Sting coming down from the
just Sting
rafters.
coming down from the rafters. Like,
So
let's
sick.
just let's
How many people came from the rafters in ECW? Zero. Raven?
WCW where ECW
Yeah.
got brought back as a TV show and a pay per view, whatever. WCW just became part of what wrestling was to be.
Yeah.
It just became part of the status quo. Look at how many people just from WCW just became stars. Yeah, there were some people that they buried.
Yep.
They wouldn't let necessarily go over just yet, but there were other people, and even the ones that they did kind of make pay their dues.
Yep.
Um, that absolutely came in and are legends in their own right.
Booker T.
Booker T, you have Eddie, you have Ray, you
It's true.
have Goldberg. Like regardless of how you
Yeah.
feel about Goldberg as a wrestler,
Yep.
he's probably one of the most legend. He's one of the people you can ask a non wrestling fan, and they'll be able to name as a wrestler.
It's true.
Like that's you, Undertaker, Hulk Hogan, Goldberg. Those are people that you can name as someone who maybe watched wrestling 3 or 4 times when you were a kid.
They know these
That's
guys.
one of the people you know.
It's true.
So WCW has so many just absolute made household names
Yep.
for
Legends.
people. Legends.
You're right.
Both companies were bought by WWE,
It's true.
but one was probably paid a lot more for than the other. Also, can we look up how long did ECW last?
Yeah, I can actually.
Like that's another argument I need to know. How long did WCW last versus ECW?
Let's go to ECW. Street Championship. All right, de facto was 2001. 1990, so 9 years.
So it lasted 9 years.
9 years. And
All right, so they both lasted longer than the Confederacy. So
that's right. Suck one.
Jefferson Davis,
Yeah, Jefferson Davis. I was trying to think of what's his name from
Robert E. Lee.
yeah, Robert E. Lee. Yeah. Suck one Lee. Southern Wrestling. 1988 is when it was founded. I understand, but when was it? Well,
They both went out of business in
2001.
2001.
Jesus. What a terrible day. What a terrible year for them.
Wow, WWE was like, I'm just gonna buy everyone in the same year.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. And they did.
They did that. That's what they did.
All right.
They bought both companies same year. And so that makes it even more apt. They
Right.
were both integrated into the WWE the same exact year. And how many ECW guys are in the WWE Hall of Fame right now that are still walking amongst the living versus how many WCW guys? Like RVD's in the WWE
Yeah.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he's
Taz is.
Taz?
I think Taz is in the WWE. I could be wrong.
I don't think he is.
I don't think he is.
Taz in the WWE Hall of Fame. There's no way. No, he's not.
He's
yet.
not.
There's no way.
Okay.
Anyway,
So, but they have a couple. But look at even WCW. Just
I understand. You got Booker T, you got Goldberg, you got Diamond Dallas Page. All these guys. I agree that they are. I agree. I have to agree with you that I grew up watching WCW more than I watched ECW. I watched ECW like that was one like I watched. It was late at night, and like my parents would come in my room, and I had to act like I was sleeping. But I think they played it like maybe like at a normal time and like a later time. But I think I was watching WCW at the earlier time. Either way, doesn't matter. Before we get to the results, I think that is important for us to, though that we do disagree on which one is better. I think we can come to an agreement that these two companies coming in 2001 was absolutely fumbled by WWE at the time. The invasion storyline should have been a much bigger, much more important storyline, but boy, did it suck. I hated it. I was so excited for it at the time, and it just absolutely was like a fart in church. It was awful.
They could have done ECWCW as a combined faction.
They did the alliance, right?
Yeah, but they could have
Yeah.
called it ECWCW or something.
I think that could have worked. All right, let's get to the results here. Let me pull up the.
Who has won?
All right, with looks like our voting was at 581 votes. If you're not following us on the social medias, go ahead and check out our TikTok. That's where we are voting. And the winner with
Give me my vote.
61% of the vote is Extreme Championship Wrestling. Let's go ahead and look at some of the comments here. It says, from Kyle, one of our friends of the channel here. Definitely a tough question. Personally went with ECW just because there's more of that underdog tone to it, but I love WCW. Hard to disagree with Kyle there. I absolutely, I respect that take. I think it's kind of the same way that I feel. Let's see, from our friends Titan the Turnbuckles, they say in the long run it was WCW. Yes, I would say for like overall WCW had like really a good run, a very good run. ECW, a lot of that run was there was hits and misses, but you think about like the NWO, right? NWO is like one of the greatest factions, the most important T-shirt in professional wrestling history. You know, uh,
First or second? Well, it might be the second most.
yeah. And see,
I
Blazing.
feel like Austin 316 is the most
That's a good one.
important.
That's true.
The NWO is definitely second most, but the Stone Cold that's the. You see both those shirts in
Yeah.
pretty equal amounts. So they're number one and number two either way.
I agree. Blazing Foodie says, love both, but I got to give the edge to ECW. I thought it would be a lot closer. I didn't think you would get, less than 40% of the vote. That was a surprise. I would have thought there was, I think that's probably just because people have like a bigger, more, I think ultimately, like, was what I was arguing. They have a bigger emotional connection to what happened in ECW because it felt like that scrappy underdog. It felt like you're going against the corporate man. Anyways, that's why ECW is better than WCW has been picked by you, the fans. The wrestling community has spoken. Let everybody know that Extreme Championship Wrestling, headed by the charismatic and always late on payments Paul Heyman, is better than the billionaire Ted Turner, showing you that the people will always win out over the profit. Yeah, I'm using it. I'm turning it into a soapbox moment. Remember, people, pro wrestling is predetermined and your life isn't. Go do something great today. We'll see you next time.
Only a 15?